one other component in our continuing coverage of this entire healthcare debacle. I believe earlier this week, I warned you that it was likely that in the Senate bill, they would completely throw under the bus the people currently suffering, the millions of people across the country currently suffering in the opioid epidemic. That was what we believed would be in the bill. That is what's in the bill. And they are trying to fool you by including a little bit of money. The BCRA would appropriate $2 billion in 2018 to fund state grants to boost treatment and recovery services for those struggling with drug addiction and mental health disorders, which might sound like, wow, $2 billion, that sounds really good. Perhaps not. Just two key Republican senators from states hardest hit by the opioid crisis were asking for $45 billion over the next 10 years. That's for 2 of the states. And that is actually, it turns out, a conservative ask. Those who are experts on the opioid epidemic say that over 10 years to truly deal with this across the country, we would need to appropriate $190 billion. But they gave 2. Because screw those people suffering from the opioid epidemic. Screw those people, many of whom were Trump supporters, many of whom enthusiastically supported for Republican congressmen, senators, and the president. What's going to happen to them now? Continue to suffer with the addiction until many of them die.
Okay, so the 190 billion covers not only drug addiction costs, but also the diseases
that come about as a result of the addiction.
That's right.
Yeah.
The 45 billion just covers drug addiction.
Yeah.
The 2 billion just covers not a goddamn thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
It covers their ass, maybe.
Yeah, but what it does, so why did they even bother putting in the 2 billion when even the draconian House bill had 45 billion over 10 years, right? Because of marketing. So they could turn around and go, did you know that Obamacare didn't have anything for opioid coverage? Yeah, that's because they passed it in 2009 and the epidemic had not begun at that point. Yeah. But it doesn't matter, they don't need to be right, they just need to be able to trick you. So Obamacare had nothing for opioid. We put in $2 billion in the Senate bill. Come on, how generous are we? Leaving out the fact that you would need at minimum actually 45 billion, let alone the 190.
And many of the people that theoretically were using their health insurance to deal with the addiction are going to be thrown off of their health insurance. So what we covered in that story was how many of those people, the huge percentage state by state that get treatment for their addiction problems and again, the diseases that come about from the addiction through the Medicaid expansion. We're not talking about small numbers, we're talking about like 40 to 60% on a state by state basis. Those people will now be thrown to the wolves and hopefully they'll get some small amount of that $2 billion.
And in reality, like John is pointing out, you're actually going to get less money, not a positive 2 billion, less money for opioid addiction because when you take into account the Medicaid cuts. Yeah. But the marketing will say, we increased opioid coverage by $2 billion. What more do these people want? So if you don't just look right behind their ads, you won't have any sense of how draconian the Republicans are. But that's what our job here is, to break down the news and tell you what the reality is. Yeah. And the reality is, if you were looking for Trump to deliver on his promise that he's going to help families suffering from opioid addiction, you've come to the wrong place. You don't like ads? Well, I hear you, brother. Did you know that you can become a Young Turks member, get the full 2-hour show every day on demand, plus so many other network shows, all ad-free, for just $10 a month? Give it a shot right now, TYTnetwork.com/join.